Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and we are here today again for BLB proper. We're going to talk about all the games we've been playing that we can't really, formulate into full videos because we got some weird stuff to talk about
Oh
today. But
yeah.
before we get into it, Tucker,
Mm.
if you, the audience member, want to talk to us about the games you've been playing or anything else at all, the link to our Discord, as usual, top of the description all the way down there. Like the video, subscribe, ring the bell, you know what to do. But
I know
Tucker,
what to
you
do.
have more games to talk about than I do. I brought
Yeah.
three today.
This is a
Um,
rarity, but I'm
yeah.
very excited because I have continued my quest, begun last episode into the realm of trying shit out through emulation. And that has allowed me to do some strange things with my life, namely playing multiplayer games from older consoles that I would not otherwise have access to. Multiplayer games are something I don't usually engage with on a large scale. I have played a number of multiplayer games in my life, believe it or not, but the majority of it is online stuff, your Overwatches, your CSGO, your
Sure.
TF2, Minecraft, all that. Or Smash, Mario Kart, Mario Party, stuff that are normally played at a large scale on at parties that
You're,
everyone knows about.
you're talking about your good niche local multiplayer title.
Niche from older consoles
Okay.
that are mostly focused on two-player stuff like that, stuff I'd never tried before. My good buddy Isaac came over and I told him I've got this great thing called OpenMU. I can hook up controllers to, we can put it on the TV, we can play anything we fucking want. And the first thing that I went for was Bobble, because
Okay.
Bobble, as what I'd heard, the arcade game, the NES port, all of that is one of those perfect co-op puzzle game experiences, and it actually works better with two players, and I agree with that. From what I played, have you played Bubble at all?
No.
You know the Bubble theme's got that great music.
I don't even
Ba
think I know
ba
that.
ba 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 da ba ba
Oh,
ba da ba
okay,
ba
keep
da
doing it. I
da
feel like I'm
ba
right
da da
there.
ba 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 da. Yeah, it's
I can
fantastic.
see it
Great
in
music.
mind's eye,
It's one of the
yes.
only songs in the game though, so that's a little
Sure.
obnoxious, but it's a great song. But yeah,
NES version? What are you playing?
yes, I played the NES
Yes,
version
okay. All right.
because I couldn't figure out how to download an arcade emulator. I really was trying to. The NES version is pretty gimped in comparison. You can't shoot your bubbles nearly as fast as the arcade version. I was watching a speed run with Isaac, like because we were having a hard time on one of the bosses,
Sure.
and we watched the speed run. They were playing the arcade version. We're like, "Grrr," bubbles were coming out of that shit faster than you could say yesterday, and I was very confused. But it's because it's the NES version, and they had to like scale it down in some ways. But
Okay.
it's got over 100 levels. It's got two campaigns. It's got a final boss that's crazy. We used a code to skip to the final boss so we could at least try it. But we got like 30 levels in. It's a really fun game. It's not a game that I will probably find myself going back to, as I didn't really understand the strategy, but it's really fun with a friend. The levels are pretty diverse. There's a set of mechanics that you really need to sink your teeth into. But Bubble, yeah,
Not on an NSO?
I don't believe so. It
Well,
might
because
be. If it is,
it's a game I'd like to try at some point. My only I
totally
of
might
course I
be
know the
actually.
characters of Bubble Bobble. Like they're pretty iconic.
Yeah.
But the
Good
my
old
one
Bub and
point of
Bob.
there we go. I didn't actually know the names. My one point of my reference was there's this one letter in Nintendo Power where somebody wrote in and said that they got the last level of Bubble Bobble and then their electricity went out and they lost all their
Mm.
progress and started screaming at the TV. So you talking about this fucking weird old NES game really just unlocked a period of time where I would just sit on the couch, Tucker, and eat goldfish one hand, flipping the pages Nintendo Power with the other. Complete non sequitur. Tell me not about
No,
Bubble
no,
Bobble.
that's a good story. I did not have access to those magazines as a kid. The one thing I did have was the Cub Scouts sort of magazine, Boy Scout magazine, whatever that they would send. And I would skip all the fucking hunting and like outdoorsy stuff and go straight to like 1.5 pages of video games that were releasing at the back. And I would cut out the little paper versions of the video game box art and I would keep them in a little plastic bag and be like, oh, I own all these games, but it was a little paper versions of them.
It's staggeringly funny you say that because before I had a Nintendo Power subscription, my parents got me a Game Informer subscription, but
Huh.
I was probably 6 or 7 at the time, so my mom was nervous I'd be looking at like inappropriate games. So she would take the magazine and cut out the pages she deemed were appropriate for me to read. So like I get a magazine in the mail, and I have to wait, and like an hour later, I get like four half pieces of paper that I got to read. Um,
That's an incredible memory.
Yes.
Man, I haven't thought about well, the one game that I really remember cutting out the box art for was the A Boy and His Blob on Wii. Like for some reason that
Interesting.
just like stuck in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting concept for a game. I never played it, but that was definitely one I cut out, and I don't have those paper pieces anymore. Let me tell you, they are long gone. Believe it or not. But I also played another local multiplayer game campaign developed by Bandai on the GameCube. It is a golf game where you hit a frog with a hammer and it goes flying. And sometimes there's a woolly mammoth, sometimes you're in space. It's called Ribbit King. There's a full story campaign where
Ribbit King?
Yes. Where all the rubidium or whatever has been stolen. It's a power source of your planet. So you got to go enter yourself in a golf, they call it Frolf, by the way, a Frolf tournament and win back the energy for your planet. I only played the tutorial for that, so I can know how to play the game. But Isaac and I played this for about 2 hours. It's a wacky ass game. The idea is you hit the frog with the hammer and the frog just goes. And whatever the frog hits on its way to its destination gives you points. And whoever has the most points at the end of 8 turns, I think, was the thing, wins the round. And you play 3 or 4 rounds on different maps. But and the maps are randomized.
How did you find out about this?
Isaac knew about it. Someone had it at some point, and he played it. And he's like, "You want to play Frolf?" And I'm like, "That sounds fucking fake. Let's go."
Yeah, I just looked it up. I've never heard of this game. It looks completely bizarre. Was it fun?
Very weird. It's a really fun game. It's so unique and wacky. It's frustrating in some circumstances because there's a lot of elements of chance to it. Like your frog will miss a pixel of something and you won't get points, or it'll hit a pixel it shouldn't of an enemy or a stage hazard, and it'll fuck up your entire like planned out run. There's power ups. You get to aim. You get to like look at the whole map. All the maps are completely different. There's tons of stage hazards. Each of the maps are randomized each time you go through it. So it makes speedrunning very interesting. But Ribbit King, I don't know what to say. It's a game that I think you'd really like just from that strange conceptual, weird Nintendo history aspect of yourself. But anything to comment on? Questions to ask?
I don't know. Frolf? I think I have literally nothing to contribute to Frolf. I have to say. You don't think it's going to come back? Not a sequel for Frolf on the horizon?
Yeah, no.
All right. Yeah. Tucker, how about I interject with the game now? Let's keep it in the GameCube era for a second. Because I want to talk to you about Doshin the Giant.
Oh yeah, you do. Of course you do.
So Doshin the Giant is a game that's gained like a kind of peculiar and emphatic cult following. Mm-hmm. Especially in the Nintendo, like the hardcore Nintendo community, there's a couple of voices, whether you're talking about like a Push Dustin or a Nintendo Life, who are always evangelizing this game. So I was really curious to try it, and as people who watched last episode would know, I recently bought a Japanese GameCube.
Yeah, you did.
So I bought a copy of Doshin, and I had to look up some stuff because getting through the menus is tough. They're all in Japanese, obviously, and so I was just looking up some guides as to what each menu option means. And I learned that the game really was not actually critically acclaimed at all. It was actually met with mostly middling to negative reviews, especially the N64DD version. For people who aren't familiar, it released on the ill-fated N64DD before then getting a release on a GameCube disc to try to save the game, because it just didn't sell at all. I mean, the 64DD was a disaster, so that wasn't a big surprise. But it's not great.
No. I was really with you for a little bit of your playthrough of this, where you were just narrating what was going on the screen, and I was just, it sounds really like bland. Is there much to it?
Well, so I've probably only played 2 hours. It's very conceptual. I think it makes a lot more sense as a 64DD title because it feels in a lot of ways like a tech demo.
Sure.
Essentially, for those who aren't familiar, you play as Doshin, or his alter ego Gashin, who is just a big red version of him who's evil. And essentially, you're on this island, and your goal is to either help the inhabitants of the island or hinder them as Gashin. And the more you either help them or scare them, the bigger each respective version of Doshin or Gashin gets. The problem is that there aren't really many ways to interact with the islanders. You can raise and lower the terrain. You can bring them trees. and that's about it. You can bring them flowers, but to
Interesting.
bring them flowers, you have to you put 5 trees next to each other and they turn into a flower. The game, I don't know. I want to play more of it because I'm curious if there is anything to really latch on to.
Mhm.
But playing it that first night for about 2 hours, I found it peculiar. I found the sound design to be fairly grating. I
Mhm.
found the game to be visually uninspired.
Hmm.
It seems like, a game that sort of just took on a life of its own in this sort of internet era,
Yeah.
being so inaccessible, being so weird, so niche,
Yeah.
and having this big dopey yellow Doshin
Oh yeah,
mascot,
he
right?
looks really weird.
He looks really weird,
It's
and
not a
he
good
has
character design.
no, he has either a really low belly button or a really small erection for the entire game,
Mhm.
which is really weird. It just, I don't know. I think that Doshin has become almost an endearing meme,
Sure.
but I don't think that translates necessarily to a good gameplay experience. That
Yeah.
said, Tucker, the one thing I want to highlight is the fact that this game really illustrates the ways that you can convey information to a player without text.
Mhm.
Because obviously there is text, there's a narrative, there are menus you have to get through, but reading about the game, you'll find out that kind of something that was attractive to the developers was the notion that you could play this game without text, and you can because it relies a lot on sort of conceptual sort of experimental techniques as you kind of realize what each button does and what Doshin does in the context of being this big monster who just showed up on this island. I think it's kind of an interesting tie between how mechanics are explained and how Doshin arrives so suddenly. And it's clever from that perspective in terms of its game design, but on the whole, I just don't think it's very fun. I don't think it's really worth playing,
Yeah.
frankly.
So what this sounds like to me is what, as you said, a tech demo, something that is a base for an idea of
Yeah,
a game, but without the substance to back it up. This
yeah,
sounds like something where if they had taken this, sat on it for a few years, let the technology develop a little bit, and develop, quests, develop more progression, develop more characters and stuff around it, it could be a really interesting early GameCube game. Like if they hadn't put it out on the 640D, all that.
yeah,
But instead, they were just like, "Oh, this is good. This is good enough. Like people are gonna have fun time screwing around." But I mean, they didn't even bring it to America, so like clearly they didn't have a ton
yeah.
of faith in it. But yeah, it's a very peculiar game. I've always thought the meme of it was funny, just people saying Doshin Giant. I'm like, the fuck is Doshin the Giant?
Yeah.
But now that you've played it, I don't want to. I got no interest. I've played enough games where the base concept is unique, but there actually is substance to it. Whereas
Mhm.
to this, you know, substance is, I think, is important for a video game,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
I
Complexity.
tend to agree.
Yeah. But I do you want me to hop over to something else?
You go for it, because I've got 2 more.
Okay. Let's stay in that era of Nintendo, not GameCube particular, but the one before it, which believe it or not is called the Nintendo 64. And one of the games that it came with near launch, Wave Race 64.
Oh, okay.
I've always heard things about this game being really unique in terms of a racer, having really good visuals for an N64 game,
Mhm.
being really fun multiplayer, and yeah, that's all true. It's a surprisingly visually impressive game for an early
Sure.
N64 era game. The water physics are like impeccable for
Yeah.
especially for an N64 game. We talked about in our Sunshine review how fantastic the water physics and visuals are for that, but this is close and it's many years before. So I don't know if I'll ever really go back to it in any substantive way. But the 30 or 40 minutes of it that I did play, some multiplayer, they've got this open world that you can go around in with a dolphin that's teaching you all these tricks and stuff. You can do tricks if you go off a ramp and you press a button combination. Your guy does a handstand on the handlebars, or he'll spin around and that'll get you a little speed boost.
Sure.
There's a lot of charm to this game. Unfortunately, it's kind of, I think for me, the idea of it is more fun, being able to race, but in going off of waves and the water physics, but it doesn't have any character. It's
Yeah.
just like literally, it's like Mitsubishi, one of those Japanese
Yeah,
car
sure.
companies. Like literally, the things are themed after real world products. Like, oh well,
Mhm.
that's weird. It's out of place. It's pretty boring. If they had made Nintendo characters that raced on wacky little things that went off of waves in the water, this would be a staple franchise. I genuinely believe that, because I think conceptually, a racing game on the water with those physics is so cool that there could be more things done with it. It would look fantastic on the modern hardware. But for what it is, faceless characters on literal brand placement vehicles, it's like, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, so I have never played a Wave Race game, but the one I want to try that I think addresses some of your criticisms is Wave Race Blue Storm, which was the GameCube launch title.
Sure.
Which I know has more iconic characters. And the main way I know this is because Josh Thomas and Rogers Base did a discussion a long time ago about the hottest Nintendo characters, and they brought up a lot of Wave Race characters. So I sort of learned by osmosis that there's a lot of memorable designs in those games.
Yeah.
But again, it was a similar thing being a GameCube launch title. Is again technical showcase for what that hardware can do and such. But the fact that the series kind of petered out suggests that, like you said, maybe it didn't have that anchor to it. But I would like to try it out. That's a complete blind spot for me in Nintendo's back catalog.
Yeah, and especially for me because I've never been into racing games. I mean, a handful of Mario Kart games are basically my only experience with the genre.
Sure.
I mean, I tested F-Zero one time, probably SNES Classic, and I've played a handful of arcade racing games. But when I hear about the best racing games that do unique things with the formula, the Wave Race series comes up, and I'm like, okay, I do want to try this. The one thing that I think is a turnoff for me, as someone who's not really into the formula of racing games, just going around the track, all skill based, is that there's only, even in multiplayer, there's only one track until you've beaten the levels in the story mode to unlock more of them. So we hopped into multiplayer straight off because we're like, okay, this is a multiplayer game, we want to try it. But having all that content locked is good, I guess, if you are wanting to consistently unlock stuff. But the fact that it's one track and
totally.
little else it just was a little frustrating. And I did beat the first level of the campaign, and we unlocked the second track, and so we were going to play that. But I think it's a really good game, and it's very impressive. But there are just some things that hold it back from me wanting to really get into it.
I think what's interesting is F-Zero GX addresses that exact issue in a way that I wish more racers of that era did by locking the single player opposed to the multiplayer. You boot up F-Zero GX and you have all the multiplayer tracks and you have to unlock the single player chapters, which is kind of bizarre in its own right, but I think it is a little bit more tailored to the type of experience. Considering the N64, its pedigree for being the multiplayer system, it is strange that game didn't unfold in that manner. But I will say, Tucker, I think it'd be worth you trying, and if you did, I would try it too, because I actually own the cart and I barely played it. I think you might like a Diddy Kong Racing.
Might.
With that's a single player adventure focused game. That's that game's entire calling card, and I think that sort of recontextualizing racing mechanics around a single player focus more than just a basic story mode, I think might appeal to you and might give me a reason to actually try this game that I bought for whatever reason, which I've barely played. But
yeah.
Do you want me to go next, or are you going again?
How many more do you have?
I've got 2.
Okay, I have 3.
So you should go one more time.
I should go one more time. All right.
Yes.
And you know what we're going to go to? Of course, another racing game, but for the NES, except for there's no cars. There's only marbles here because we're talking Marble Madness for the NES.
Oh, okay.
This game is fucking weird. And honestly, it's kind of bad. It's bad. No, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Look it up.
It's visually very impressive for pseudo 3D graphics on an 8-bit system. It's got a good song in it. It's fun conceptually for multiplayer, but holy shit, the controls don't work with a D-pad in a semi 3D space.
Sure.
It's really tough. Like the hit detection is absolutely god awful, and the maps just aren't designed for the controls that you're given. And also, there's only 5 stages. The game's so piss hard that they never expect you to actually beat it, but you can if you know what you're doing. There's only like 5 or 6 stages. It's really strange.
Does this have synchronous multiplayer?
Yes.
That's really impressive, actually.
Yeah. And a couple things about the multiplayer is there's a timer going down at the top of the screen, and you have to get to the goal before the timer runs out. And then you carry over the points that you had left when you hit the goal to the next level. So basically, the worse you're doing, the worse you're going to do in the harder levels. And so it's a really terrible way to incentivize getting better at the game because it just made me feel like an asshole every time. And Isaac was a lot better at it than me. So I would like die 3 times in a row. I'm out, I'm done. And then he'd just be able to keep going. And I'm like, well, that just kind of sucks. But I really don't think it's a good game from basically any aspect except for technical prowess.
Sure.
It's not well designed.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played it. I don't have any attachment to it, but just looking at screenshots and such, having an isometric synchronous multiplayer NES game is pretty impressive. But ultimately, it doesn't. If it's not fun, why bother? In the words of one Mr. Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah, and especially because though it's impressive for the hardware, it's not designed for that hardware. Well, I mean, it shouldn't be on that hardware because there's no depth to anything. So it's really hard to judge where walls are or where platforms drop off. And also your dumb fucking marble, if it drops 2 inches, it shatters into a million pieces and you have to restart the last checkpoint. Like, ugh! And like some places like, oh, I could do a shortcut here, and you fall like, oops, and then really
was this another NES Works recommendation?
No, I just heard of this game.
Oh, okay.
Or actually, Isaac recommended it because Pro Jared did a video on it in which he like throws a bunch of marbles and puts them in his mouth and then complains about how bad the game is. It's a pretty funny video, actually.
All right. Tucker, let's walk all the way to 2021 for a second because I want to talk about a new game. I want to talk to you about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Oh.
I don't think it's very good.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I have to put an asterisk on that because I think that the game is beautiful. I think that it's fun to play, but I feel like if this is what we're touting as next gen ambition, then I sort of scratch my head a little bit. I think that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart has a really solid gameplay loop, but it's the exact same gameplay loops that we've been experiencing since the PS2 era, and I think that Rift Apart only offers a veneer of newness on top of that.
Sure.
So if all you're looking for is a really polished, beautiful, third-person action title with light platforming elements, then I think you're not going to go wrong here. But that's not really the way it was sold, and that's not really the way it was talked about. So I think that it really squanders its biggest opportunities to advance the series. Rivet is such an incredible character. I love getting to play as Rivet, but the problem is the game doesn't really service her from a gameplay perspective.
Sure, yeah.
And what I mean is throughout the narrative, essentially you play as Ratchet and Rivet, but they're completely interchangeable. So weapons you get with one character show up with the other character. Traversal items you get contextually within the story of one character's adventure just show up with the other character.
Okay.
There is literally nothing aside from some animation differences, like Rivet throws a hammer, Ratchet throws a wrench, right?
Yeah, sure.
But almost entirely, they're interchangeable beyond a narrative level. And the narrative, the presentation, that's where this game succeeds. So that's not what I'm criticizing at all. I think Rivet is awesome. I think Jennifer Hale does an incredible job. I actually got to talk to her about the game, which is kind of what motivated me to buy it in the first place. Because I do like Ratchet and Clank, and I was excited to try it, but I was a little bit hesitant for these reasons, and I think my hesitations were founded when I played. But it just feels surprisingly unambitious, and I think that Insomniac left a lot of interesting creative ideas on the table by not playing these things out.
Yeah.
Why at minimum does Rivet not have her own arsenal?
Yeah.
I mean, Insomniac's Ratchet games have always been about these incredible weapons, and this game is no exception. There's this one, I forget what it's called, but you throw like a terrarium sprinkler and you turn enemies into like big hedges, and they get frozen in place as big hedges. Like, there's so much creativity, so why doesn't Rivet have her own guns? Or more ideally, talking about in the context of a $70 next-gen system-selling PlayStation title, why aren't their levels designed differently? Why isn't Rivet more about platforming, Ratchet more about action, or why isn't there more substantive differences? It just feels old. And even the dimension hopping stuff is neat, but it ends up, again, just offering a veneer of newness where, wow, we're jumping between locations, but ultimately, I feel like you could have taken this out, made it into a cutscene, in the texture of the game in most instances wouldn't have been changed. There's some interesting levels where you're like hitting a switch and it immediately flips you to a to the same location in a different dimension, which is clever. And I think that's an interesting utilization of the technology. But in my playtime so far, those moments have been few and far between.
Sure, yeah.
So on the whole, I think that this game would not have scored nearly as well in an environment where more games are actually using the PlayStation 5's hardware.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm gathering from this. And I'm going to try the game. I actually have my copy of the original sitting there. I think I'm just going to burn through it in a couple sittings. And so I have the context for the series, because honestly, I haven't played the games to completion. I've played a little bit of that one. I have Up Your Arsenal on PS2. But I'm curious about this one from how it'll stand over time. Once we've gotten presumably a sequel to this on PS5 as well. I think that'll be happening, considering how fast Insomniac is at making these large scale games. And as games come out that take advantage of the hardware in terms of more gameplay instead of just the SSD and all that. This is, as you said, the veneer of newness. I think I understand what you're saying without even having played the game, right? You're looking at this and you're, wow, it's gorgeous. Wow, the dimension hopping is utilizing this technology. Wow, there's a lot of particle effects fucking everywhere. But does that really contribute to the experience of the game in a meaningful way? Why wasn't a cutscene, right? A cutscene of dimension hopping could have happened on the PS4 and no one would have blunk an eye. But I do want to play it myself, because you're in the vast majority here, the very large minority. The opposite of that one. Yes.
There we go.
You're in the minority here of people are really liking this game. And I don't know. I haven't listened to reviews. I haven't read anything about it. I just know that it is very critically acclaimed at the moment. Everyone I've seen, honestly, outside of you has really been enjoying the game. So and I know your critical analysis can intersect in ways that a lot of people's experiences don't get to. But I'll be able to provide my own perception on this once I am in a state with a PS5 in it. There's not any PS5s in Texas, as far as I know.
I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, because I think that it is a objectively solid game. I think that, especially listening to Jennifer Hale and Courtney Taylor, who I will talk to about the game, who play Ribbit and Miss Zircon respectively, hearing them talk about it, hearing what Insomniac put into this game. They are such a talented studio, but I think they're really talented at making these same games, right? And so it's polished, it's beautiful, it's fun. But I've played it before, and I think that what it implements to try to be different ends up falling flat. So,
have you? Well, what's your experience with the series before this?
So I played a bunch of the PS2 ones when I was younger, and I played the 2016 game, and I played I believe Into the Nexus. The like the PS3 naming ones always mix me up, but I believe Into the Nexus is the other one I played. So
there's a lot of those games, and
there's a lot of them.
Initially had funny fuck you names, which I kind of miss, but I think that considering how major a franchise it is for Sony now, and they're less edgy than they used to be, it kind of makes sense that they've polished that away. But it'd be fun to get a threequel to this one that has some sort of sex joke as the name. Get back to the good old days.
Yeah. Yes.
That's your final game for the day?
No, I got one more.
Ooh, okay. Well, if I have two more, then I'll go next now, and then you'll go, and then I'll go. Sounds like a plan. Yes. Because I've got to talk about the game that I played the most of this past week. I played like 17 hours of Miitopia within
I forgot we're talking about
5 days.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this game.
Oh my God, Miitopia. Now, I'm going to 100% put it out there that my opinion on this game is colored by the fact that I crammed it into such a small period of time. I was on a trip to Louisiana to see my grandma. Lots of road trips, lots of riding in the car, lots of sitting around where my grandma was cooking or while my mom was off doing something else. And I'm going to be selling this game to one of our friends in the Discord, so I wanted to get it beaten before I give it away, just because I did enjoy the game so much when I first played. I'm like, okay, I better hop in. Might as well get my fill. I got my fill and I threw up. This game filled me up to the top and spewed out, and I actually do dislike this game. I think it's terribly flawed. It's indicative of many current game industry standards and trends that take away from the charm that the game started with. And also it's just fucking shallow. This game has like 6 game mechanics and like 6 lines of dialogue, and you see those for the first few of the games. It's really great, but after that, it's just repetition. It's unfulfilled concepts. They introduce actual changes to the gameplay and world approximately 18 hours into the game once you thought you've beaten it, and that's really frustrating in and of itself. But the fact is that for the most of your adventure, you're doing the exact same thing over and over again. You're seeing the exact same lines of dialogue. Your characters are all acting the exact same way because the personality thing doesn't actually change the way that they interact with each other in meaningful ways. There's no depth to the story. There's no depth to the combat. And it goes on for over 20 hours. This game does not need to be this long. It should be a 6-hour, highly replayable experience with a lot of customization. You can't customize the inn at all. You can barely customize your guys.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a bad game, but I think there's a lot of potential in it that just is not realized. It's clearly a budget game that not a lot of development went into, because if they had thought about it more, it's not that hard to find this core and really expand on it in an interesting way. But man, it's not worth $50. Holy shit, it's not. I don't like Miitopia.
I think that's totally fair. I mean, I haven't played it anymore. Frankly, I put a couple hours, and you raised some interesting concerns when we were talking about the game about it feeling shallow, and I kind of saw that and just kind of lost interest. You stuck through to really prove to yourself that those flaws are there, and I think you made a really good point. And it's a drum I beat a lot about making your game commensurate to the length that it should be, opposed to the length that the market thinks that it'd be better as.
100%. This is a turn-based JRPG in the lightest sense possible. No challenge, no customization, no character, no exploration. It's the bare bones of that.
Yeah.
But JRPGs are long, so this game has to be long, but it shouldn't, because the gameplay is not there to support that runtime. Right. You're not developing a party of characters with interesting personalities. You're not getting to know more about the world, and you're not like customizing your characters, not growing in meaningful ways. So I don't know. I'm highly disappointed by this.
It's really too bad. I was thinking, maybe does Miitopia and Mario Golf single player mode kind of signal a return for the Miis? But it doesn't really seem like they're being given the attention that they actually deserve. It makes me wonder why Nintendo even told Grezzo to remake this game. Frankly, it's just a shame it turned out the way that it did. It feels like those resources could have been used better elsewhere 100%. To either have Grezzo remake a game that's more important, or to retool this into a different experience.
An original game. Another thing that's disappointing is that this is a remake, but it also is an expansion. There is new content in this game, the outings, which I think you might have experienced, where your two characters go off and they do something and bond a little bit and increase their friendship level. That's entirely new, which in my mind, that's such an integral part of the game. Like, that's where a lot of the character interaction comes from. I can't even imagine playing the original one. Like, that's so much of the charm. Although it gets very repetitive very fast, that's so much of the charm that it's good that they added that. They added the horse, which is fun, but ultimately doesn't really mean anything. And then they obviously updated the graphics, except not really, because once you hit about 15 hours to the game, the worlds start to look worse. Like there's pixelated textures in the background, like, oh, they didn't upscale that at all. And the enemy designs are really polygonal, like they didn't update them. So this game needed more time in the oven, and honestly, it just should not have been remade. They should have worked on a sequel to this that did address my concerns and made it what the game should be. But it didn't deserve a remake.
There's got to be a really interesting story as to why that even happened. And I mean, they couldn't have spent very long on it. I mean, they finished development on Link's Awakening probably a couple months, probably mid-summer of 2019. Then COVID hit. So how much time was really spent on this game? Why were they told to do it? Who knows?
Yeah.
We may never know. Tucker, the last game I want to talk to you about today is Halo Combat Evolved.
Of course. Of fucking course it is.
I'm replaying that. My goal, Tucker, is to replay all of the Halo campaigns prior to Infinite's launch.
Okay.
And considering then give us a release date at E3, unfortunately, I might have more time to do that than I want. But starting with Combat Evolved, I'm in the mission 2 Betrayals, so I have 2 more missions to do after this. Of course, I've already finished this game in the past, and Tucker did a review for it. This time I'm playing on Heroic, which is hard, but not fuck you, hard of Legendary.
Mm-hmm.
And playing it a second time, playing on a higher difficulty, I really have a much deeper appreciation for the game.
Sure.
And I enjoyed it a lot more. I think that on the second playthrough, where I know what's going on, what's going to happen, and I'm a little bit more familiar with Halo mechanically and everything, it really lets the game's design shine through, and it both has me doubling down on certain issues with the game and no longer criticizing certain aspects of it as strongly. I think one of the biggest things we both criticized was the level design of the interiors being very repetitive.
Yeah.
And visually that's true, but I feel like on a replay, it becomes really clear that there's an intentionality behind all of it. The way that Covenant and Flood are placed and moved to sort of push you towards certain doors opposed to other ones, the ways that areas loop back onto themselves, so you end up at a familiar point which you can then use to ground going off to a different location. 2 Betrayals is a great example of that, as you're moving both to the interior and the exterior. I think that visually the level design is clearly restrained by Bungie's inexperience at the time and the lesser power of the original Xbox in conjunction with how ambitious the game is. But I think that from a design perspective, it's a lot stronger than I recognized the first time. I think the narrative is also a lot stronger. There's a lot more to notice on a second playthrough. The ways that cutscenes are set up with little moments that you'd miss that offer a lot of little contextual things in between cutscenes. Also, like maybe running into a Marine who tries to shoot at Chief because he thinks he's a Flood, because there's this relationship being built up where Chief doesn't know about the Flood yet. This Marine does. He's scared out of his mind. Kind of waiting around a minute and hearing the Covenant yell about, "Oh, I got him, I threw the grenade, I got him," or whatever. There are these moments of heart that add to the way that Combat Evolved tells its story environmentally. I still think that the narratives get better because they get more engaged, especially Halo 2. But I have a deeper appreciation for how efficient the design of this game is. It says a lot and allows you to do a lot with relatively few resources, which I think is really commendable design, on top of the fact that when you're playing on Heroic, you have to think a little bit more in the combat. And it really allows you to appreciate this sort of song and dance that Bungie has constructed here, where it's not really a cover shooter. You can move around a lot. It's really projectile based. You can get in and out. You can bob and weave. You really have to use your full arsenal, because you're going to run out of ammo fighting on Heroic. So you got to understand when to use a needle or when to grab that plasma pistol, what to do when you see a Jackal, how to break their shield, how to take them out, what to do with the different elites, figuring out the patterns so you can throw plasma grenades at them. I think the buzzword that I'm now assigning to this game is efficiency.
Okay.
It is such a precise game in terms of its design, and I really appreciate that. So I'm having an excellent time replaying the game.
How far are you in it? Like how long have you been playing it on this playthrough, and what's your progression like?
Well, I think I said it already, but I'm on 2 Betrayals, so I've got 2 missions after
that
it.
means fucking nothing to me though.
Oh, there's 10 missions in the game. 2 Betrayals is mission 8.
Okay.
So I've played it over just a couple of sittings. I had to put it down, pick it up in between work stuff, but I'm almost done. I will probably finish it tonight, tomorrow night, and then move on to Halo 2. Again, playing on Heroic and move to that also. But I'm just really coming to love the entire world of Halo and love that gameplay style.
Just now?
Yeah, believe it or not. And in the context of Combat Evolved specifically, really appreciate what Bungie accomplished on the hardware they accomplished it on.
We did a blood pact last episode.
Yeah.
And you failed it miserably. And you failed it reasonably, but miserably.
Sure.
I'm going to make a blood pact that has a little bit of a caveat, considering I don't have access to this game yet. But I will play the campaign of Halo 2. Now we've got to start. Now look, all right. Take a step back, everyone. I've been rewatching some early BLB episodes, and one of our consistent jokes is we say a lot of shit that never comes to fruition.
Yeah.
We're always like, "Oh, can't wait to play this game. Can't wait to try this game in a different way. Can't wait to go back to it." None of it ever happens. Fucking barely ever happens. We're always planning stuff. We're always saying, "Oh yeah," but Blood Pact is now going to mean something more. It's going to mean focus. It's going to mean what's what I'm looking for?
Consistency,
you know, but like you have to do it. It's important. This is
a mandate.
This is a promise. Sure, let's go with that. I make a Blood Pact that I will play the Halo 2 campaign when I return to Lincoln and have access to the video game. I gave a lot of crap to Halo 1. I think I've died down on that a little bit as I've heard you get through the series more and as time has passed since my playthrough. But I'm very interested in this series in a larger way. I do want to play Infinite when it comes out. I do want to try the multiplayer. There is online multiplayer for those games, Master Chief Collection, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I should try some Halo multiplayer, whether that's creating our own little thing or hopping into larger servers. That's also a possibility, though. Our skill level difference might make it a little awkward for both of us. But Blood Pact, am going to play Halo 2. I'm going to complete that campaign.
Yes.
I return home at the end of next week. So within a week of me returning to Lincoln, I will have beaten Halo 2.
And I should note that my Blood Pact to play Frog Fractions was disrupted by having to do E3 work literally from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed every night for the past week.
That's reasonable.
By next episode, I will have played Frog Fractions.
And hold your hand up, fucking Blood Pact.
Blood Pact.
Okay.
You should do like a spit pact.
Can't even see it. There you go. Spit pact.
There we go.
Spit pact.
I don't know what to do with this now.
Drink it. That's the spit. That's part of the spit pact.
I'm not gonna drink my own spit on camera.
All right, there we go. I just did a real spit pact where you drink your own spit after spitting it out. Okay, well, after that wonderful spit pact, which by the way, I am going to make a thing that we continue to do on the show because I think it's fucking hilarious, and also it will partially motivate us more to actually stay true to our word, which is something we've never done before.
No, certainly not.
But I have one final game to talk about, and a game that we can talk about together, because it's a game that you have played, and that is Kirby Star Allies for Nintendo Switch.
I keep forgetting.
A game that I finished Miitopia, and I was just done. I was annoyed, but I was in the mood to continue to play video games because while my experience with Miitopia was frustrating on the whole, mechanically and experience-wise, I did very much appreciate being back in the groove of completing a video game, being focused on one video game, and having the experience done. Like I can say I beat Miitopia, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, exactly. And I was looking at my Nintendo Switch, believe it or not, and looking at all the games I own, which I have a lot of fucking Switch games. So probably too many Switch games. My brother sat on the couch next to me right here. Imagine me petting him. And I was like, hey, you want to play a multiplayer game? We're looking through the multiplayer games, and down at the thing at the very bottom, because I organized by playtime, very bottom, Kirby Star Allies, downloaded from one of my friends' other profiles because they bought it. And I was like, how long is this game? HLTB, 5.5 hours. And I'm like, I take that as a challenge. I can beat that game much less than that because Kirby's stupid fucking easy. And I sat down, I got on that grind. My brother joined me for about the first world and a half. And we had a good time doing it in multiplayer. Then I played most of the rest of the game by myself. And then my friend Isaac joined me for the last few worlds and the final boss.
Yeah.
That is my set. I just setting up my experience with it from a base level. Any comments so far? Any questions, comments, concerns?
Well, okay. Because I believe it or not, we talk off camera.
Occasionally.
Audience.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we do that. So I know that you're not very big on the game, and I will say, here's what I will say. I don't want to sound like it's invalidating your opinion because that's not how I mean it.
No, I know exactly what you're gonna say.
But I think you're playing Kirby improperly because you can beat Kirby stupidly quickly.
Yes.
But where Kirby succeeds is when you're playing it slowly and you're looking for the puzzle pieces and you're looking for the secret exits and everything.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, does level design make you want to do that? Is the bigger question. And the answer for you is no.
No.
But I will say I do think that, in my opinion, having played Star Allies to completion, having played like 25 hours of the game,
Good God.
I think that it is a lot better when you play it the way it was intended to be played, which is slowly, which is
Yeah.
looking for the collectibles. But that does not mean that that's the only way you can play Kirby, which means that it's not the only read you can have on the game.
100%. Yeah.
That's
So
how it's going on what you're about to say.
exactly. I need to recontextualize my thing is I did for the first world or so go for every puzzle piece, find all the collectibles, like make sure that all the little boxes were ticked on the world map. And after that, after realizing that I don't find the collection of this particularly compelling,
Yeah.
I don't find the discovery of it to be interesting or complex enough for me to be engaging with that side content. That I was like, this isn't worth my time. I'd rather
Sure.
beat this game as quickly as I can to see the breadth of it, to see how long it is in terms of how many levels you have to beat the game, see what the final boss is, experience the Kirby story. And it does color my opinions, but I do think that my main problem with Kirby isn't that it's easy, isn't that the copy abilities aren't a cool idea, because of course they are. I think the idea of having 4 dream friends and little buddies on your team is a unique enough spin for it to be interesting on a Kirby formula, and combining them is interesting. But Kirby's stages are just not well designed, in my opinion. They're empty, they're repetitive, and the enemies don't pose any challenge. There's no unique level mechanics between levels that allow you to, I remember that stage in a particular way. There's no progression of the levels in terms of their difficulty or complexity in any meaningful way. And that's my main complaint. Sure. I think Kirby lacks what makes platformers interesting, which is memorable levels, memorable mechanics, specific level gimmicks. And it doesn't have any of that. And also, while I think the idea of having 4 people on your side is fun and allows for the combination of abilities, that is not expanded enough in terms of or dug into deep enough in terms of a mechanic throughout the game. It doesn't progress. There's only maybe 2 times that's actually required to do. And also, it just gets visually fucking insanely overwhelming. Everyone's doing the exact same thing. Your character is the same size and not sticking out from the others. So I get lost in the shuffle every once in a while. I don't think it lends itself to a visually compelling gameplay experience because it's so cluttered with 4 characters doing the same things and bosses and all their projectiles and everything. I don't think this is a very good game on the whole, but holy good God almighty, does it have a fucking banger boss fight at the end.
Yeah,
that boss fight with Void Termina, there's like 7 boss fights at the end, phases and transformations and different characters fighting. That's a fantastic boss fight that not only has unique concept in terms of its gameplay, it has scale, it has memorable moments in terms of the things you have to do in the boss fight. It's fantastic. It's such a crown jewel on top of this steaming pile of warm soup. It's not poop, but it's warm soup. It's milk. It's milk toast. It's milk on toast. But man, I loved that boss fight. Isaac and I did it together. Fantastic boss fight.
Yeah, so I really think you should play Superstar.
I've been hearing this for many moons.
Because
no spit pack yet.
No spit pack.
Maybe at some point.
I honestly, are you driving yourself back to Lincoln?
Keaton and I are driving back.
Oh, okay. Well, just make Keaton drive and just play Kirby Superstar.
That's on SNES Online, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the problem with Star Allies is that they were borderline creatively bankrupt by the time they got to that one. I think that a lot of your complaints are simply not present in Triple Deluxe in Robobot.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we got to Star Allies, I think it was symptomatic of a sort of problem we've been talking about recently that's kind of being addressed with Nintendo's newest slate of games, where these handheld developers did not know how to transition to home console. And I think we feel that with Star Allies because while it is really beautiful, and I do think that when you take it slower and you play it as a collectathon, it does have more merit. It just doesn't have ideas or an identity that are implemented well enough to compel people who aren't pre-established Kirby fans to want to experience the game in that collectathon way.
Mhm.
And so while I enjoy the game and I think that its side modes and the DLC content are a lot stronger than the core game, ultimately I think this is the one that really is the wake-up call for HAL of we got to do something different, right?
Mhm.
And I think that
As we've said in our other comments out externally from this video, it's the new Super Mario Brothers of
right.
Kirby, and it doesn't necessarily have its own identity in terms of the friend. What are they called? Star Friends, something like that. Well, there's a
I don't
Dream
remember.
Friends, but your buddies are
Are
called
they
something
just
different.
called Star Allies?
They might be. Well, maybe. But they are just the enemies, which is cool,
Yeah.
but they're not unique in that way. Like they're just the enemies you've been seeing from Kirby over and over again. And sometimes the mini bosses, you get you fucking buzzers and you're like conga guys, whatever they're called, and you can fight. They can fight on your
Bonkers?
side. Bonkers, thank you, that guy. That's fun, but considering how little of identity this game has on its own, it's a little bit underwhelming. Like, yeah, you can play as all these iconic characters, which by the way I think is cool. I think the Dream Friends is a cool concept, but none of them are, well, the three witches I think are new, but other than that, they're all old stuff. So it's really based on nostalgia.
Yeah, I think again, kind of tying it back to Ratchet and Clank, this game does have a veneer of newness about it. It purports to bring back the combination abilities, but it doesn't really. It brings them back in the most surface level way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere near the creativity of a crystal shards or whatever. So I think I'm a little bit higher on Star Allies than you are, but I'm a more engaged Kirby fan, so I want it.
Most certainly.
So I already understood that I like this gameplay loop, so I was willing to take each level slowly and kind of flap around and use the different copy abilities to try to find things and solve the very simple environmental puzzles. But does that make it good? I would say probably not.
Sure.
So I really hope that the next Kirby game is a definitive win for everybody. And I
That's
really hope you
awesome.
play Superstar because I really think that if you're going to like Kirby, it's going to be a Superstar because that solves the variety issue. It contextualizes collectibles some more, like the Great Cave Offensive. There's a lot that game does that the series still has never recaptured. So
now this Kirby conversation, I want to continue in a few tangential points. One of my main questions, listening to you talk about why you enjoyed this game and the Kirby series in general, seems to be antithetical to your experience with many other games. Is you are always on record as you don't really engage with side content. You like to mainline stuff. You like to see how the mechanics progress to the specific core of the game, and not really go to other things. Why does Kirby compel you to collect puzzle pieces and find occasional hidden rooms?
because I think that Kirby's mechanics are designed almost purely to facilitate that. I think that the core Kirby experience is looking for the puzzle pieces and everything because it's designed to be a scalable experience where younger kids, the way I used to play Kirby, can just flap to the end of the stage or whatever, right? But if you want to find a little bit more of an engaged experience, then I think you do have to look for it. And I think that's intrinsic to the design. When I think about even side content in other platformers, well, the goal there is the challenge. It's about getting to the end of the stage. It's about that. But in Kirby, it's just not. I think Kirby is more about the ambiance of the world. It's about the soundtrack. It's about the way the game looks. It's about manipulating the copy abilities to influence the stages and just kind of having a more relaxed time. And I just think that is an experience that more naturally and deliberately facilitates that side content opposed to most others.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's actually a much better experience. I thought I had like fucking objection, caught you in your fucking lie. But I think that's reasonable. I do think I wouldn't say it's the side content being the core aspect of the game in terms of this is what the experience should be is necessarily fair considering that the core of the game is beating each level. That it is factually side content, whether you want to engage with it or not. In terms of how you want to experience the game, that's obviously entirely up to you. But I do want to try other Kirby games. I'm a passive aggressive Kirby fan in that I do have interest in continuing the series, but mostly to prove to myself that the games aren't that good. It's a self-deprecation I'm kind of stuck in because I don't know if you remember, but I played Kirby's Adventure a couple months ago, and I thought that game was really fucking dumb and boring. But also, I do want to say that part of my hard time engaging with Kirby, especially Superstar, and even though I haven't played it, I know what the format of the game is that I don't really like engaging inside modes in video games too much. I like campaigns and I like getting them over with.
See, but that's what, and see, that's the difference, because modern Kirby games have the campaign, and then they have the mini game modes.
Sure.
What Star Allies is a it's not Star Allies. Superstar is a combination of smaller campaigns that have a beginning, middle, and an end that you'll complete. You go after Dynablade, you go after Meta Knight, you will go after the Great Cave Offensive. These are, in many ways, self-contained, small, bite-sized Kirby games that then coalesce in a larger package that has the variety that the other games are missing, because it doesn't treat there. You will see that there are a couple very deliberate mini game modes, but the substantive modes of Superstar are not your DDD drum dashes and your fucking Star Allies chopping the trees down. You'll see.
Okay, well that's interesting. Is there an order to play them in? Is there any sort of overarching story, quote unquote, for the game? Or
well, it's been a long time. Also, play if you can. It's probably not. I think Superstar Ultra is the best way to play. That's the DS remake.
I have that, but that copy is in Lincoln.
Okay, well then just wait till you get back to Lincoln and play that, because that's the best way to play it.
Okay.
Because it's got more modes and such. But if I remember correctly, it does point you towards playing the Dynablade one first and kind of moving in an order.
Okay.
I honestly don't remember if there's an overarching narrative. I want to say there's not. I think it's more you beat a mode to unlock other ones.
Okay. All right. That sounds really not like the kind of content and format that I like to engage with my video games, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm willing to have it convince me with these smaller stories that that's a way to format a game in a more compelling way. But I'm not excited. I'm not excited to try it. I'm going to be honest. I'm begrudgingly playing it, but I just want to make that entirely clear. I'm not.
You could also never play it.
No, maybe it's just me and my self-deprecating fuck you to Kirby, but I do want to try the game. I want to give it a semi-fair shot, as fair of a shot as I can, already being somewhat biased against a Kirby, but be that gameplay format. But I'll try. I will try.
Well, I suppose that's all I can ask for.
Yeah. Oh, Kirby. Oh, Kirby. Now, see, the thing is, I started with Kirby's Epic Yarn on the Wii, which is a game that I really do enjoy. Yeah. I think that the way that it contextualizes the stages in more visually interesting ways with memorable like level gimmicks and themes, and the power set being integral to the character in terms of transformations is fantastic. I really do like that game. But unfortunately, the Kirby games that I have had the most experience with, Adventure, Nightmare in Dreamland, Triple Deluxe, and Star Allies, don't carry over those things that I did enjoy about Epic Yarn. But I know there's a lot of fucking Kirby games, man. There's a lot of them, and I'm sure there's gonna be a handful that stick with me. So I'm willing to methodically keep plodding through these goddamn games because I know they're not particularly long, which is also something that I like.
Yeah, you can beat Superstar in probably couple settings at the most. I know that's what you like. You could log it on backlogged.
And I will. I
think we're done here though, Tucker.
I think we are. Kirby kind of knocked the sails out of my wind, but I don't really care. I think this is a good episode overall. And I'm excited that the development of the Spit Pact is now a thing for this series. That just gives me an unimaginable, unfathomable amount of joy.
I know it does.
Deep in my groin.
Well, you pointed to your sternum.
Well, it was in air. I was dragging down.
Oh.
The energy flows.
I wish the camera was lower, I guess.
It's true. Could always be. But thank you for watching, everyone.
We gotta get out of here.
BLB is here to stay, and I'm excited that we have started season 2 with a fresh invigoration.
And no schedule whatsoever.
And no fucking schedule. I'd like it to kind of be, maybe. I don't know.
I would too.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm getting my wisdom teeth removed tomorrow. So my gameplay output.
You'll be dumber. To just have your dumb teeth.
Oh no.
Abram Buhner, this is the voice of God.
Should I be questioning
I have
why
a
you're not in
surprise
camera?
for you.
Yeah?
I have grown back into my younger self.
You genuinely look 3 to 5 years younger.
I know.